On 3rd and 3, they protect Brady. Scans the field and lets it fly. It's Evans. It's a touchdown.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty. Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo! And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly Bucks fan himself from BucksNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. Happy Friday. How you doing?
Fine. Not only is it Friday, but we finally get to talk about an actual football game. Like this is technically, even though it's preseason and the results don't matter, this is a preview show. This is technically the first preview show of the 2022-23 season.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. Getting back into our regular schedule of shows, so expect a bunch more content going forward. But yeah, I mean, here we are. We were just talking a full month ago at this point about how, there's nothing to talk about. Training camp is right around the corner, but like we're still kind of reeling from OTAs. But here we are. The first preseason game is here. And the biggest story of the week isn't that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a football game. Oh, no. We'll talk about that here shortly, playing tomorrow night in Raymond James Stadium against the Miami Dolphins, who they have had joint practices with this week. The biggest story of the week for Tampa Bay involves quarterback Tom Brady. He did not practice yesterday. Todd Bowles came out, had a press conference, and basically addressed the media saying that Tom is going to be missing some time. He has planned time off, PTO. He's got paid time off. And he will be back sometime after the second preseason game against Tennessee. So while the Bucs will be traveling up to Tennessee next week to practice with Mike Vrabel and the Titans, Tom Brady will not be available. He won't be playing in that second preseason game. We already knew he wasn't going to be playing in this first preseason game either way. But Tom's going to be missing, 10 days, give or take. Now, as far as the information we have, this was pre-planned. This does not affect his ability to start against Dallas week 1. And to be honest with you, between you and me, maybe some of the people listening, I feel like that's where the conversation should end. Like Todd Bowles kind of made it clear that we're going to be fine. Devin White made it clear that the locker room and everybody will be fine. We are respecting Tom, respecting his space. Everybody has all kind of theories, of course, but I feel like with the information we already have, if you're trying to make a story out of this right now, I got to feel like you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
The funniest thing to me is the people that you read the replies on Twitter, which is a mistake. I shouldn't do it, but people go, he's probably, my guess would be he's probably planning a trade or retiring. I'm like, okay. For one, he's definitely not planning a trade, and two, he's not retiring. Like, just get that out of the way. I tweeted it like a day ago. Russell Gage was recruited by Tom Brady to come to Tampa Bay. Logan Ryan recruited by Tom Brady to come to Tampa Bay. Julio Jones recruited and came to Tampa Bay because of Tom Brady. Tom Brady's not just going to say, oh, yeah, you know what, guys? I made you guys sign here, but I'm out. So you're going to be without me. It's not happening. So that you can shut that down right now. And there's all sorts of rumors. Todd Bowles said the only thing you have is that it's a personal matter. It's a personal matter. And the good news is that Ian Rappaport went on Pat McAfee yesterday and said it doesn't sound like it's like a health issue or anything. Brady's fine. It seems like his whole family's fine. I know his parents had some complications from COVID a few years ago. That's something that you never want to see. And that's what a lot of people thought at first, like, you hope everything's okay. So the good news is that it seems like his family's health is fine. It doesn't seem like that's the issue. It just honestly sounds like Rappaport kind of explained it, and then he didn't know for sure, but he was like, yeah, I'm guessing that they had something planned, something big that like Giselle and the kids were like, you're doing. And he had already retired by that point. And when he came back, Giselle was like, okay, you can come back, but you're still doing this. And he was like, okay, that may have been one of those things. And he talked about before he retired, he talked about the balance of football and life, football and family, and how he's tried to find that balance, and it's not easy to do because he has to commit so much to football. This could be, sort of one of them compromises that he made with his family. Okay, like, if you let me come back, I'll make a deal. Like, I'll be open with the Bucks, and it was a pre-planned thing. Like, just like you said, it wasn't like something that shocked the Bucks. You could tell that they were expecting it. And it's not that big of a deal. Is it great? No, it's not great, because he's going to be missing valuable time in practice, valuable reps with a guy like Robert Hainsey, who's an inexperienced center, Julio Jones, Russell Gage, who are inexperienced wide receivers playing with Brady. Especially a tight end room that includes Kyle Rudolph and a rookie and Kate Otten. It's not like you have old reliable Rob Gronkowski there, which your chemistry was fantastic with. So it's not ideal. We're not saying this is a great thing. It's not, oh, this is going to be great for him. No, but it's also not the end of the world. It's really not like he's not quitting. He's going to be there. I'm sure he'll be back quickly after Tennessee. And honestly, so they didn't practice today. They play on tomorrow. They don't practice on Sunday. He's only gonna miss.
He's only gonna miss like four or five practices.
Yeah, like four or five practices and a preseason game, which he wasn't gonna play in.
It's funny because everybody has their sources nowadays. It is sources season. I mean, obviously, with the NFL schedule coming back into play, you're going to see concrete evidence week after week, but people have their sources. It's fine. I have my own sources, and not to flex on you guys or anything, but my sources tell me that Tom Brady is actually on sabbatical with Aaron Rodgers, checking out what the ayahuasca hype is all about. And worst case scenario, he has a life-altering experience on psychedelic drugs, comes back and wins back-to-back MVPs. I mean, this is a win-win right now. So, at the end of the day, Tom Brady has his personal business to attend to, and at 45 years old, with 7 Super Bowl championships, one of them being with the Buccaneers franchise, you gotta believe the last thing anybody wants to do right now is give him a hard time. Is it not ideal? Sure. Is it a little out of the norm for your starting quarterback to miss 10 days of camp during this period? Yeah, it definitely is. But when you kind of factor in all the things that go into it and the context as to why Tom Brady is still practicing, you know what I mean? Like, you just got to kind of give him a space. I have zero doubts he's going to be locked in, ready to go for week 1 against Dallas. And maybe we'll see him in that last preseason game. You know what I mean? Like, he'll be back before then.
Yeah, and obviously, we'll get into this when we talk about the game more, but this now leaves more opportunities for Kyle Trask and Blaine Gabbert, to play more, especially since Brady wasn't going to play in either one of these games anyway. Like, that's important, right? Todd Bowles said last week that he wasn't going to play in this game. So that was definite. And I think some fans kind of were obviously thrown off guard by it, because it's just like, it's not like something at the beginning of camp they said, oh, well, Brady will be with us for the first 2 weeks, but then on August 11th he's going to be gone for 10 days. Like, that's just something I think that worried fans, because they're like, it kind of came out of nowhere. Like, even if it was pre-planned, like, maybe you should have said something. But then from the other side of the sword, why does the team have to say anything? The team isn't like, the team doesn't have to tell the media anything. Like, they don't have to explain anything. It's not their right. Like, the fans don't need to know. So, like, if it's not that time yet, why say it? So it's, like you said, it's not really any of our business. It's Brady's business. It's his family's business. Whether they're on a vacation, cool. Whether there's actual problems, we hope they get solved. We hope everything works out fine. But, we won't know, and it really doesn't matter, because right now it's not affecting football at all. If there's questions on whether or not he'll be ready for Dallas, then we can start to really talk about it, because then it's starting to affect football. But right now it's not a huge deal, even though, like we both said, it's not ideal, but it's not a big, oh my God, what's happening?
I don't like to call out people in particular. I'm not going to say any names or anything, but there was, if you guys are on Twitter, there was a media quote unquote outlet that had uploaded a picture that was a cover of a magazine, like a Gossip People US weekly magazine. And it was talking all about how Brady and Giselle are having some issues with his commitment to football, and they're having marriage problems, and they kind of uploaded that with a little bit of I don't know, intention is the right word here, but like I want to believe they uploaded that thinking that that was going to answer some questions, and it was just really funny. But yeah, I mean, I think what I want to wrap all this up with is it's always entertaining to watch how emotionally involved people get with like another guy's business. Like, yeah, Tom Brady is a pro athlete. He's the cover of the team. He's, one of the poster boys for the NFL, but I mean, they are human beings, dude. You got to kind of realize that football for Tom Brady is still a job, and he's going to be here ready to do his job once it starts counting for real. But let's get into this preseason game. You mentioned Kyle Trask, and I wanted to kind of open up things with him because I feel like as far as the offense goes, that's the biggest thing people want to see. Veterans who aren't going to play, it is what it is. You got a couple of guys who are dealing with injuries. I have a feeling Mike Evans probably isn't going to be out there. Rashad Perryman, I don't think will play unless we get some kind of positive update. Julio Jones, I don't know. Maybe
I wouldn't expect a single starter.
Yeah, I really don't expect a lot of the guys that have already been nursing like veteran days off, things like that. Robert Hainsey will obviously have a lot of eyes on him, but Kyle Trask, he's not going to start. He's not going to be playing with your first team, but we're probably going to see the most of him compared to any other quarterback on this depth chart right now. And for Kyle Trask, this one means a lot because he has just had a rough camp. I mean, he's had some highlight plays every now and again, but it's been a lot more bad than good. And this game, with the reps that he's going to get, it's a chance for him to just kind of show people which way we're going to go from here.
Yeah, I mean, we're assuming he's not going to start first. I mean, even if he does, like I said, I wouldn't expect any of the Buccaneers starters to play. Whether you're injured or not, I wouldn't expect any of them out there. They didn't really play much of their starters at all. The first preseason game last year, I think they played, a drive each. And then that was it. So the only one I may see is like a Robert Hainsey, maybe. I think he might be the exception as like a starter that might actually play a little bit because you need to see more of him. And then maybe a guy like an Aaron Stinney or something because there's still a left guard competition going on. But I assume Gabbert would start the game. As far as Trask goes, though, just like you said, this is the first real, I wouldn't even say test, but the first real opportunity for him because camp hasn't been kind. And it seems to be, I mean, to be fair, the two joint practices, he didn't do awful. He rebounded with a couple of nice plays in the joint practices, but it just, his week prior to that, like leading up to that, was just awful. And it's different, right? Practice is different than games, and I understand all that, but you still want to see some type of progression. And I think you're going to see a lot, like you said, you're going to see a lot of Kyle Trask. I think you're probably going to see Blaine Gabbert be out there for a little bit. I think you're going to see Trask, like you said, most of the time, and Griffin will probably play like some of the fourth quarter or something. But for the most part, you're going to see Kyle Trask, and he needs to show something like he does. I'm hoping that they put him in sooner rather than later because, if you want to show something, throwing to the 7th, 8th, 9th string wide receivers on the team that aren't going to make the team anyway, that's not really a recipe for success. I don't know how to judge somebody either. So like, I hope he gets to be able to throw to guys like Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson and Jalen Darden, like guys who actually have a real shot at making the team and have proven success in the past in the NFL. So, because like I said, the opportunity, like, and people say like, oh, he's struggling because he's throwing to these receivers. Oh, the receivers you're throwing to don't excuse bad accuracy and bad decisions and stuff like that. That doesn't excuse that. So I'm curious to see how he does. This is the first one. He has 2 tests coming up here, right? Technically 3 if you want to count the joint practice with Tennessee as well, because you're going to play a good bit in Miami versus Miami, I should say. And then you're going to go to Tennessee and play a good bit again. I don't know if Brady plays in that third game. We don't know yet. I don't know how much you're going to play in that third game. And that'll be the last time. I have an article up on Bucs Nation right now talking about this. A few days ago, it released. how this is going to be, the last time this preseason that the Bucs will be able to see Kyle Trask until, hopefully, assuming everything goes fine, but to see Kyle Trask until potentially next offseason when he might be the starting quarterback or competing to be the starting quarterback. So you have to feel comfortable with what you've seen in him this preseason. And there's not a single player on this team that needs a good preseason more than Kyle Trask. Like there's not.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I've spoken before on where I stand with Kyle Trask, and I don't not like the guy. I'm ready to root for him. I was ready to roll with Trask this year. You know what I mean? During that time, purgatory, if you will, where we didn't know Tom Brady was coming back or not. But yeah, I mean, you look at the situation that he's in, sitting behind Brady, who ultimately decided to come back for a third year, drafted at the very end of the second round by the team that just won the Super Bowl. Like it wasn't ideal for him to go out there and, trial by fire his way through things. But at the end of the day, what you want to take away from this is you put on his tape from the preseason last year and you put on his tape from the games he's ultimately going to play in this year. If you can find an improvement, great. Seems like he sticks around and there's that much hope towards him maybe being the guy of the future. But I mean, if he goes out there and he stinks the joint up, that's just what I'm so curious about. And that's what I get intrigued about more than anything, because it really does feel like, I don't want to like beat a dead horse here, but it really does feel like it's an uphill battle for him at this point if he wants to start changing the minds of people, or at least in the fan base.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know exactly how the front office and coaching staff feel, but I'm sure like they're seeing the same things we are. Like, it's not like they're seeing something completely different. And obviously they know the process and more, and they know what goes into it a little bit more than we do. And they know more football than we will ever know, probably. But it's you still gotta look good. And you need does he have to light the world on fire? No. But you need to, and I said this before camp even started. Gabbert's going to be a number 2 quarterback. Don't the Buccaneers released their depth chart this past week. It's an unofficial depth chart, but Gabbert was number 2. Doesn't matter. Gabbert's going to be a number 2 quarterback. That doesn't matter, right? He was always going to be the number 2 behind Brady. But what you needed to know was that Kyle Trask was actually like he looked better than Blaine Gabbert in the preseason. And Gabbert last year did not have a great preseason, but Trask like didn't look better than last year. So like, what happens if that happens again this year? Like, there's no way you can go into 2023 with if Tom Brady doesn't return, which is a pretty high likelihood, I think. With Tom Brady's not your quarterback next year, there's no way you can go into 2023 thinking, oh, you know what, Kyle Trask, I think he's going to be the starter. Like, you can't expect to win football games that way and still have Kyle Trask your starter if he doesn't show you something. If he shows you signs of promise, sure, give him a shot. But if he continues to not progress, the clock's ticking. I know it's only year 2, but I mean, the clock is ticking here because with quarterbacks, you don't have that luxury of time.
You don't have the luxury of time, and when you're Kyle Trask, who's sitting on the bench of a team that is very much still in a win now mentality, like you said, there's no time to waste in that situation. But let's assume Brady does retire. This is his last season. He rides off into the sunset after hoisting his 8th and final Lombardi trophy at the end of this season, because we all know he will. Maybe I'm a little biased. I don't know. Let's assume that, Kyle Trask is in a position where he's competing for the starting spot. If they haven't seen any improvement from him this preseason, and the majority of this roster is still here, you look at the guys who are still under contract. Shaq Mason will still be here. Russell Gage will still be here. Mike Evans.
It's still a win now roster.
Right. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. You can still win games with everybody on your roster. Leonard Fournette's still going to be your lead back. So with that being said, if you don't have that great of a feeling about Kyle Trask, and once again, you're looking at a quarterback room of Ryan Griffin, Kyle Trask, and Blaine Gabbert, you better believe the Bucs are probably going to want to trade for a quarterback or make a move on somebody. I don't know what the draft is going to look like considering they're coming off of a Super Bowl win. But, you kind of look at a quarterback-rich draft class coming up and maybe a free agent class with a few winners. I think the Bucs are going to be more inclined to try and keep this train rolling if Brady retires and the roster is still in good shape.
No, right. And it's like you said, if you don't have progress, you can't waste a year. Mike Evans isn't getting any younger. Chris Godwin isn't getting any. I know Chris Godwin's still young, but he's not getting any younger. Assuming Levante David returns, he's a free agent. Let's say he signs a 1 or 2 year deal again. He's not. He's going to be, towards the end of. He's towards the end of his career. It's not the end yet, but it's getting there. Like, do you really want to waste it on bad quarterback play? Ryan Jensen, he's over 30. I mean, Shaq Mason is in his prime right now. Donovan Smith is in his prime right now. You can't waste it if you're not sure about this guy. So we hope he does good, because that would be good for the team, that they don't have to spend resources next year to go out and get a veteran or trade up in the draft for a quarterback. That's the best case scenario, that they don't have to worry about that. That's why they drafted Trask in the first place, because they were hoping to have this scenario to where, okay, Brady, he's done. Let's hope Trask can manage, because this roster can win. Do you need elite quarterback play? I don't know if you need elite quarterback play, but you need good quarterback play. And right now, I'm not sure Trask is ready for that. And we hope, like we said, there's some guys that practice worse than they play. There's some guys that when there's a game situation and the lights are on, they play better. And maybe Trask is one of those guys. Time will tell. And the first test will be tomorrow night.
Let's take a look at the offensive line now. Moving on from the quarterback, we keep the discussion on the offense. There's a position battle down there at the left guard spot. Luke Gedeke, Aaron Stinney, and I guess Nick Leverett can also be lumped into this conversation, because all three of those guys have gotten some reps with the first team these past couple of weeks at training camp. But what are your thoughts so far? I feel like all three of those guys are going to play. I feel like if one of them has a chance not to, it would be Stinney. But I also feel like there's just as much reason for him to want to be involved and out there fighting for that spot, because it certainly isn't his hand over fist just yet.
Yeah, I do think you could see. I don't think you're going to see a worse Donovan Smith, Shaq Mason, but I do think you could see it, like I said, Robert Hainsey and Aaron Stinney, just because that's still a battle. Yeah, and Todd Bowles said this past week that, probably around the Indianapolis game, right before or after, they'd like to know. Harold Goodwin spoke earlier this week about, like, yeah, he needs to pick a guy eventually. Like, you need to pick a guy, and continuity along an offensive line is so important. So, like, if it's Stinney, you need to know that it's Stinney, and you need to have Stinney be working with your first team offensive line exclusively. That needs to happen, because you need to build that rapport. I know Stinney's a veteran and has played before, but he hasn't been a full-time starter before. We talked about sample size. He's looked good in a small sample size. What's going to happen when he plays all 17 games? So that's why I do think Stinney's still in the lead. The depth chart was released. I think Stinney was technically the starter, but the depth chart doesn't matter, especially the first one. That take it with a grain of salt. Stinney was still a starter. I still think he's in the lead. They like what they've seen from Nick Leverett. I think Luke Gedeke got off slow, but he really shined in the practices again with Miami, and maybe he's starting to come around too. So I think if I had to bet money, I would still say it's Aaron Stinney's job to lose. But I think they're pleased with their guard depth overall, because I think both Gedeke and Nick Leverett have shown flashes, and they've all had their days where like, oh, no, maybe this guy could be. And I think that speaks to their depth on the interior there.
Oh, yeah, it's a great feeling to be this far into the competition and feel that good about all three of those guys. Still very well much in the mix. And over these next 3 preseason games, you get to see a lot of all of them. But something that I saw firsthand this week that I can appreciate about Luke Gedeke in particular is his physicality at these joint practices. We talked leading up into it about, these guys are ready to hit other people. They started fighting each other at camp, and then you get Miami at the end of the week, and there was a fair share of scuffles out there. I'm not in the tap with every single team's training camp, but I think as far as ranking the thing, it was probably one of the more physical joint practices that we heard about this week.
Have you heard about the Dallas and Denver ones?
Yes.
Those got way heated.
Those are brutal. But I like how they kind of underplay it. Like they undersell it. You know what I'm saying? There was a thing that I saw where it's like there's 2 types of reporting on training camp this week where, there's a couple of pushing and shoving every now and again, and they're like, oh my God, these guys are really getting after it out here. We're going to have to, make sure everybody gets back into the locker room safely. And then there's the camp where like blood is shed and guys are just
Bloodbath,
targeting each
just
other. And they're like, yeah, it's a little chippy out here, but these guys are ready to go. It's regular football stuff. But that's my favorite part of this time of year, is everybody just kind of getting pissed off at each other again.
right, yeah, and then because you have no way to take it out on, and then once you finally do, you're like, this is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll happen next week too in Tennessee. So, yeah, there was a lot of physicality, especially. I mean, Miami was the Bucks won day one, but Miami was, I think, the more physical team on day one, just from reading it.
Day two. So I was out there yesterday, and we were watching the defense over on the far field, which the fans couldn't get that great of a view of. Yeah, and it was just as rough as you had heard about. Miami was firing at will during some of those red zone sections.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, day two definitely belonged, I think, to the Miami offense. But they were both physical, but both days were very physical, and that's to be expected. But yeah, Gedeke was involved in a thing. Duke Riley was involved in a lot, especially yesterday. But yeah, it's good to see. Obviously, Luke Gedeke was kind of advertised as that, as a guy that's kind of plays with that edge, that little mean streak, and that's good, and he's gonna have to continue that, because I think that only helps his chances of winning that job. He's clearly the Bucks like that. Like, the Bucks look for that in their guys, and I think most NFL teams do, but some guys you either have it or you don't. Like, you try to kind of fake it. Some guys, I think they try, but you either really have it or you really don't. So far, Gedeke's showing that he legit has it. Doesn't mean he'll win the job, but I think the Bucks are pleased with his progress so far. And you have to remember, just because he doesn't win the job, like if Aaron Stinney's the starting left guard week one and he's the starter all this year, that doesn't mean Luke Gedeke's a bust. I mean, just like we talked about last week, he's from a small school, and not everybody is Ali Marpet. Not everybody can just step in and plug and play. Those are special players, and he's from a small school, and it may take him a year. I think eventually he will be the starting left guard for this team. It just might not be this year.
He's a rookie. You know what I mean? Like one of the things that we talked about with this draft class in particular was guys that can come in here and contribute. And if Gedeke doesn't win the starting job, I don't think that means he's not in a position to contribute based off of what we have seen from him already at camp and the fact that he is still very much in this position battle. But like, Aaron Stinney has pro experience, and then you talked about certain guys just having it, and Luke Gedeke kind of having it. You can't fake the funk at the NFL level. Like, in college, you can probably get away with it if you're a more imposing guy. You're bigger, you're taller, you're stronger, bigger, because the skill level isn't quite as balanced. But once you get to the NFL, man, and you're going up against a defensive tackle that's been doing this for 10 years, like you're not going to go out there and pretend to have it when you don't. But I'm excited about his development, and I'm excited that as of right now, he seems like a guy who could very much make a dent on this roster, and I'd love to see how this thing shakes out. But the Bucks do love that physicality. Let's kick over to the inside here. The center position, these reps are going to be really important for Robert Hainsey, who had a little bit of a scare this week at camp. Luckily, crisis averted on him.
I think it was more of the fans being scared.
Well, okay, but I'm going to be honest with you. I cannot blame people for having a heightened sense of anxiety as far as injuries go.
And anytime you see injured and the word cart in the same sentence, people go berserk.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
Well, Hainsey was good. He was back at practice the very next day. He has looked fine ever since.
It was just cramps, folks.
Yeah, and I will say that for Hainsey right now, we get to talk about how the preseason is really important for him. But I hate to bring up the absence of Tom Brady again, but Hainsey's one of those guys where, like, Tom Brady isn't necessarily hurting the team, but Hainsey not having a starting quarterback who he desperately needs to kind of figure it out with, that's not going to be ideal for him.
Yeah, that hurts. And I think that one is probably the one that hurts the most. You can develop chemistry with receivers, right? With Julio Jones, Russell Gage, Kate Otten, Kyle Rudolph. You can develop chemistry with those guys, but it's the quarterback center relationship is something that I don't think enough people talk about. Enough casual people. Like, I think the people that play football and like quarterbacks and centers, like, they understand. Like, that's important. It is incredibly important. A high snap, a low snap can throw off the entire timing of a play. Like, and it could change the play. So you need to have good communication there. You need to have good chemistry. You need to know what your center likes, and the center needs to know what your quarterback likes. That's the one that I think, yeah, Tom's absence does really hurt and affect. But the Bucks still have Hainsey's had his ups and downs, right? And I think that's to be expected, especially when just being thrown into it. It's not like he was going into camp expecting to be the starter. He knew that the team re-signed Ryan Jensen. Hainsey was going to be possibly competing for the left guard job. Like there was a possibility he was going to be the left guard. I still thought that Stinnie had the inside track, but like Hainsey was in that competition. Then on the second day of camp, hello, you're the starting center. And there's not really much of a competition, but you're the starter. Oh, do you sign a veteran? No, we like you. So, it's Hainsey. And like you said, I think snapping to Gabbert and Trask is one thing that'll be valuable and will help him, but it's not the same because they go into Dallas and Gabbert or Trask won't be back there snapping. He won't be snapping the ball to them. He won't have to communicate with them and be loud and like make sure that they're both on the same page. And that matters. So I'm interested to see what Hainsey does. I'm interested to see. I think he's going to play. I don't know how much. I think he might get a series or two. I don't think he's going to play a whole lot because I mean, if he goes down, like legit,
like these reps are important, but they're not so important enough as to where he's going to be out there for most of the first quarter. Even like I think 2 drives tops you'll probably see of Hainsey, maybe 3 if they get crazy, but like much more than that, they're just pushing it.
Yeah, and I honestly think you'll see 2 or 3 drives of Gabbert too, and I think that'll be it for him. So it'll be interesting to see how Hainsey does, and because he's an X factor this year now. He is. If he does well, that could change the trajectory of this team. But if he does poorly, that could really hamper their ability to win a Super Bowl because, like I said, that center is basically the quarterback of the offensive line. He's the guy who there's 2 players that touch the ball on every play, the quarterback and the center. Like those are the 2 guys that are going to touch the ball on every play. And when you have an inexperienced center like that, you want to get him as many valuable reps as possible.
While we continue to talk about the offense before we look at the other side of the ball, I know we've talked a lot about the wide receiver room, and with a guy like Brashad Perryman more than likely not going to play this week, it opens the door that much more for these guys trying to make the team further down the depth chart. But the only name I really want to focus on this week, Scotty Miller, we've kind of had discussions about, and we know what this game means to him, but I want to talk about Tyler Johnson because he's had his plays at camp, but joint practices, from as far as I know, he hasn't been awesome. And day 2 when I was there, I saw a couple of drops from him as well. And I feel like this is where he's going to have to kind of start to kick it in high gear here.
It is. And that's something he's always struggled with other teams. It seems like he does. If the Bucks were playing the Bucks every week, he'd be a Pro Bowler because he does very well. And that's ever since he came into the league, he's done very well. Last year's camp, he was really good too. And but when there's another team coming into town, whenever he's playing against another team, he fails to capitalize on those moments. And this is like one of Scotty Miller or Tyler Johnson is not going to be on the team like in a month. Like they're not. Like one of them is not going to be on the team. Maybe even both. So both of these guys have critical camps and preseasons ahead of them. I still like Tyler Johnson, obviously more than Scotty Miller. Everybody knows how I feel about Johnson, but he needs to prove it. Like he needs to prove it. You're going to be going. I don't expect Miami to play a lot of their starters either. So you're probably going to be going up against a second or third string defense for most of the night. If you're good enough to be a fifth or sixth wide receiver on this team with a stacked receiver room, you need to prove it. You need to go out there and be productive. Scotty Miller, the same thing. Like they're 2 very different players. Obviously, we know that. And that's why I think Johnson may have the edge because I think he can block a little bit better, and that really matters in this offense. But he just, he's got to turn on, or else he could be in real danger of not being here in a month's time. And the same thing with Scotty Miller. Scotty Moore's another guy who, like Johnson, flashed, early on. But it was kind of quiet during the joint practices, and they're going to be looking, I think, to give them a lot of reps. Like you said, Mike Evans ain't going to play. Chris Godwin, we know, isn't going to play. Russell Gage now with his injury, which just to provide a little bit of an update, Todd Bowles said he tweaked the hamstring just like Mike Evans. So while it shouldn't be any issue for the opener in Dallas, I think they're being cautious. I don't think they want to test anything. So maybe he plays week 3 if the preseason, if Brady plays, to try and get some of that chemistry. But I wouldn't expect to see him out there anyway, anytime before that. And Julio is probably not going to play either. So it's like the wide receivers 1, 2, and 3 are going to be Jalen Darden, Tyler Johnson, and Scotty Miller. Like, there's your opportunity, guys. Like,
feels like the playoffs again.
I know, it's crazy, right? That was the starting lineup versus the Rams in the divisional round. But like, here is your opportunity, and you need to show it. Like, you do. Jalen Darden has the edge to make this roster, and a lot of people still question it. Why is Darden a lock? 1, this is year 2 for him. This is year 3 for Johnson, and year 4 for Miller. So that's the 2 differences there. And then 2, Jalen Darden is the returner. They like him at returner. He has a specific role. Scotty Miller, North Howard Johnson, none of those guys have a role like that. So they need to carve out a role by playing receiver and playing it well. And they're going to have to shine if they want to make the roster.
The running back room, I think the first chance of the year for a lot of fans to get a good look at Rachaad White.
I think you're going to see a lot of him. Because I don't think Leonard Fournette or Giovanni Bernard's playing.
I would be surprised if Gio plays, but I mean, he got a lot of work against Miami, and he did look good. He broke away for a pretty long touchdown on the ground yesterday during the 2-minute drill period. But yeah, Rachaad White, I mean, he's going to be the talk of the town after this game. I don't think this is a very hot take here, because we know that, you're going to see a lot of handing the ball off in this preseason game, kind of running their clock down. But I think Rachaad White, whether he's catching the ball out of the backfield or taking a handoff, he's going to be one of those guys who making the most of this. And the other running backs, you've got Keyshawn Vaughn. Don't let me forget here. Rachaad White, Keyshawn Vaughn. Gio Bernard was the guy I wanted to say, but he's probably not going to play. And if he does, it's not going to be very long.
Yeah, no, the other guy is Kenyon Barner. So
thank you. Yeah, how the hell is he still on this team, by the way?
Yeah, me and James, I think it might have been the Tuesday that we were at practice. And I was asking him, I was like, is that Kenyon Barner? And he was like, yeah. I was like,
we're in like
I said the same thing. I was like, how is, like, he's still here?
I know, dude. Like, you hear about guys year in and year out who kind of like always seem to end up on the roster. Like, I remember for a couple of years we had that case with Dario Ogunbowale. Like, for a while I thought he was gone, and then training camp comes around and there he is on the roster again, ready to go in preseason. He did make some plays during the regular season, but like, yeah, Kenyon Barner, I've seen enough of him to know that I don't really care for him on the team. I know he isn't that great of a returner, and he's nothing more than a preseason running back to me, but it's still just kind of funny that, and what number does he have? Like 30 or 80 something?
30, I think 38.
38. Okay. Yeah.
You haven't, the numbers have gotten crazy, but I haven't seen a running back with the number 80 yet. So besides Craig Cordell Basham, but
hey, it's training camp. I wouldn't rule anything out.
Well, that's why I don't expect Giovanni Bernard to play. I look at it as you have 3 running backs. You have Rachaad White, Keyshawn Vaughn. Oh, I mean, both of those guys I think need a lot of reps. Rachaad White, a rookie. Keyshawn Vaughn, he needs to prove himself too, just like Kyle Trask. I think this is a big camp for him as well. He's looked to me like the same guy. Like he's looked like the same exact guy. He's an inconsistent pass catcher, and I think he's not really going to change. I just think he's going to be that guy. But you need to see it in the preseason, and maybe that changes against like actual competition in a game. But I think Kenyon Barner will. Yeah, I think he may get an opportunity to return kicks. Stop giving me that look.
I cannot believe you were going in on your guy Sneak Vaughn like this.
Yeah, I know.
That's your guy.
A shocker. It's a shocker.
That's your dude.
It's a shocker. And so no, I have one more.
What changed your tone so quickly?
I have one more funny camp story. On Monday, the running backs were catching passes out of the backfield, Brady threw one to Fournette. It was caught. I think Gabbert threw one to Rashad White. It was caught. And then, Trask threw one. And the only drop was Keyshawn Vaughn. That was the only running back that dropped one. That's, of course.
Oh, not your boy Sneak, man.
I just looked at James. I just let out like a little chuckle. Nothing personal against them. It's just, just like Bruce Arians said, like, I don't hate you as a person. Just, your football sucks. Like,
So I know this is technically a game preview show. It's hard to really like break down
you can't break down a game. Yeah.
Right. You can't really break down a glorified scrimmage, if you will, between Miami and Tampa Bay. It's a scrimmage
inside of a stadium, basically.
As we look at the defense and the guys that are going to be out there, none of your starters, obviously, but if you want to take something away from this defense after the game on Saturday, Evan, what would you want your biggest takeaway? Like, what do you want these guys to go out there and accomplish?
Well, I think some notable players that will be out there. I think Logan Hall. I think he's going to be out there. He could be a potential starter for them this year. I would expect him to be out there. I think Anthony Nelson might get a few reps here and there. I think they still want to see what they have, and if he can be that third, edge rusher for them, or else they need to sign a veteran or trade for a veteran. I think they want to see a little bit more. I wouldn't expect Anthony Nelson to play a ton, but it wouldn't shock me to see him start the game. And then KJ Britt replacing Kevin Minter essentially as that third linebacker. I've heard good things about him in camp. I want to see if he can continue that. Grant Stewart has struggled as an actual linebacker in camp, which, I mean, hey, he's a special teams ace. Like, you're not expecting him to go out there and be like this all-star linebacker, but you'd like to see a little bit more improvement from him there. I'm curious to see the safeties because, like, is Keanu Neal going to play? Obviously, I don't think Antoine Winfield, Mike Edwards, like Logan Ryan, those guys, but Keanu Neal's a guy I could see playing. Like, I could see a guy like him playing. Nolan Turner, the undrafted free agent, I believe out of Clemson. They've liked him. He flashed early on in camp, has slowed down a little bit, but he's a safety. If they carry 5 safeties, he could be that 5th safety. So I'd keep my eye on him. And then obviously, as far as the corners go, Zion McCollum, I think he'll play a good bit as well. The Bucs really obviously love his athleticism. He has all the tools. I mean, if you're talking about tools, he was a first, second round talent. But actual traits, like and film and stuff, like actual film, I shouldn't really say traits, actual film, that's what landed him in the 5th round, but he's very raw, and I think you're going to see a lot of ups and downs with a player like that, right? It reminds me a lot of Jamel Dean. He had all the tools. Jamel Dean, if you want to talk about like tools and traits, Jamel Dean might be the most gifted cornerback on the roster. Like, as far as speed, height, ball skills, it's just a matter of.
It's gonna be a hot take for a lot of people, by the way. I want you to know that a lot of people are gonna hear that and be like, "What the hell is this guy talking about?"
Traits wise, okay, Carlton Davis is the best cornerback on the roster, but traits wise, as far as pure traits and ability, Jamel Dean might be the best cornerback on the roster in terms of just physical traits. That is important. I know people will ignore that because that's not the hot take they want it to be. But as far as physical traits go, I think Jamel Dean is that guy. And he struggled with consistency early on. So I think you could see a guy like Zion McCollum struggle with that type of consistency. But I'm looking for those players. Both on, and this is important to remember, both on offense and on defense, you're calling in plays, but you're not running like the most complicated things in preseason.
I mean, you really don't script. Maybe your opening drive, but beyond that, it's not like
there's no game planning. You're not saying, we're going to attack the middle, with this linebacker right here struggles against man coverage. So we're going to, like, you're not really,
it's going to be a different linebacker every quarter. So it's, that's
like,
why it's not the best when you try to break down in the long run what's going to play out during these preseason games. But I'll tell you this, it seems like we have saved the best part of the game for last. A kicking battle still in full swing, man. Ryan Suckup was a perfect 7 for 7 on day 2 of joint practices.
I love how nobody's giving it. Nobody's. Tell me when
nobody's folded.
Nobody has had an off day. Like, there hasn't been like, Jose Borregales.
Borregales, I mean, 5 for 7 one of the days this week, but like that's the worst either of them have had throughout camp. I think Suckup, his worst so far is 6 for 7.
Yeah, like he's just been, and right now you have to say Suckup's in the lead. He's the veteran. Like, I mean, if he keeps kicking that way, you have to keep him.
It's
like,
his job to lose.
Yeah, like, and I think it's close, but like push comes to shove, they're gonna go with the veteran who's been there for 3 years. So I'm curious to see the rotation of it. Just like we talked about, the Bucs take their opening drive and they score a touchdown.
I think it's gonna be
who goes out for the extra point. The next drive, they go down, kick a field goal. Who's going to go out for the field goal? Does it matter how long the field goal is? Do you want to see if Borregales can make it inside of that 40 to 35 range? Or do you want to see if Suckup can make a 52, 53 yarder? That'll be interesting to see. And these ones matter the most. I think coaches put a lot of weight on kicks in the preseason, more so than in practice. In practice, it is completely different. The preseason, you have a whole stadium of fans, not just the couple hundred that are at training camp practices. You have a couple thousand that are there inside of a stadium with the wind blowing, another team actively trying to block it. I think this is going to determine. This is the first one, obviously. It's the first preseason game. The Bucs aren't going to name their kicker after this game. But this is going to be the first step in determining who's going to be the kicker. And it's been quite the battle. And I think it's probably been the best battle of camp, but you just don't talk about it a whole lot because it's a kicker. And like ever since Ryan Suckup came to town, the kicker has been like,
it's kind of
a normal. It's been normal.
Right, exactly. We haven't had to worry about kicking trouble since Ryan Suckup came to town, and I'm forever grateful for that. I mean, every single week, a couple of years ago, the 2020 season, we were saying Suckup doesn't suck. He had a little bit of a hot streak. Our boy was ice cold in the best way possible.
And miss a kick in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I am excited to see how it ends up shaking out. But as of right now, our kicking game definitely feels like it's in the best hands it's been for a lot of years. But, Evan, before we wrap this thing up, I figured we'd put a bow on it with a special announcement. I know we didn't really publicize anything that was going to be said on today's show. I don't even know if you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you figured it out by now.
I don't.
Oh, really? Okay. So
I think I have an idea.
It's a programming alert. It is it is an addition to the content that you get from us all season long here on the Cannon Fire podcast. We are incredibly excited to announce that this year we will be doing a weekly Buccaneer mailbag show with former Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Sean King. We did one a couple months ago and people responded to it pretty well. A lot of great questions were sent in, and we got a lot of sound bites that I wasn't expecting to get.
Spoiler alert, that was the test run, folks.
Yeah, exactly. That was the test run for what was hopefully going to be a weekly segment here on the podcast. So be on the lookout for that once we get closer to the regular season. But we are going to probably have him back on the show here soon, just to kind of formally introduce you to everything that's going to be happening, the format of the show, things like that. But yeah, if you've been listening to the podcast up until this point, there's a little inside scoop for you. I got an inside scoop for you.
There you
go.
That's
for you guys.
Yeah, we're really excited, and just like you said, we're adding to the content. We didn't do a mailbag every week last year, I don't think.
But we did.
Did every week though?
It wasn't
like every other.
Okay, so the idea was to do a mailbag every week, but we wouldn't always get questions. Yeah. So we would have
send
to
in questions, guys. Come on.
Have to kind of call in an audible on that one.
And the thing is, like, since we have Sean King, it can be questions about that week's game, it can be questions about the upcoming game, or it can be questions for Sean King himself, about his personal experiences playing for the Buccaneers, playing in the NFL, being a quarterback. It can be these things. Like, we're not just gonna discuss just strictly, the last week's game or this next week's game. It'll be basically, that's a show that's going to be dictated by you guys, what you guys want to see answered. And we're really excited. So that's it's going to be happening in the regular season every week. Haven't decided on an exact day yet, but obviously once we do, we will let all you know. And we're really excited.
That's for you. That's for you guys.
We're really excited.
That's for you guys. 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 That's for you Season prediction show also just around the corner. That's going to be coming soon. I feel like it's a rib at this point. Like we've been telling people every week.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. We're going to be halfway through the season talking about Week 8's game, and we'll say, yeah, season prediction show right around the corner. Don't you worry.
And it's just so going to happen that me and you had the exact same predictions, and even the right scores of the games prior to Week 8, we're going to have the exact same. Yeah, actually, I had the Bucs beating the Cowboys 24-21. Actually, it's funny.
That's why.
Funny I asked that, and I said that Tom Brady was going to throw for 252 yards, and I said all that. So cool.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I think the pressure of getting the record right for the third straight year.
Pressure.
It's a lot of pressure.
To me, it's fourth straight for me.
That's why we haven't done it yet. Because like,
I'll give you guys a little inside scoop. I was thinking about it last night, and I may have made a change or two last night because I was thinking about it. I was sitting in my notes app and I was looking at it, and I was like,
injuries happen. They change things.
Injuries happen. That's why we try to do it at least after the first preseason game, because you never know. Like, and that's just not with the Bucs. That's with teams on the Bucs schedule. Things can happen. Remember not last year, but 2017, the Bucs were supposed to go up against Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill tore his ACL. Now they're going up against Jay Cutler. Like, that happens. Like, things happen. So that's why.
That was a wild time in Dolphins history. By the way, when you've got Ryan Tannehill and Jay Cutler as your backup.
Well, I mean, Jay Cutler was the starter because Tannehill was hurt. But,
yeah, you're right.
Like I said, Tannehill, like I said, he tore his ACL like the first day of camp. I'll still never forget that quote, though, from Jay Cutler's introductory press conference when the reporter asked him, you haven't played football. I was actually mentioning this to my dad like last night. You haven't played football in about like a year. What kind of shape are you in? He said, well, the good news is I play quarterback, so I don't have to be in that great a cardiovascular shape. But I was like, that's great. That is great.
Man, I've gotten a kick. If you guys like podcasts, make sure you check out Jay Cutler's podcast. I can't remember the name of it, but
he just started recently.
Yeah, he's had a lot of good guests on there. And he's just a funny guy. He had Pat McAfee on there. That was the first episode I was able to take a look at, and it was.
He's so careless that it's funny.
I know, it translates so well to being a good podcast host. Because I think if you're gonna do a major sports podcast, and like, if you're not the most informed person in the world, the least you could do is be a little bit funny. For Jay Cutler, it kind of comes naturally for him. So go check that out, folks, if you haven't. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, unless I missed anything, I think that's just about going to do it.
One more program.
Oh, I did miss something. All right, here we go.
During the regular season, we go live for a game recap show after the game.
Yeah.
For this preseason, we won't be doing that. So we will have the show for you on Sunday, not after the game on Saturday. So if you're expecting Saturday night, you're expecting a show from us. Don't worry, you won't have to wait that much longer, just a couple more hours, then we'll be here to recap everything and talk about what went right, what went wrong, who looked good, and this and that. Just remember, the wins or losses does not matter in these games. So please do not, if the Bucs lose, please don't say, well, there goes this season. This team's done.
This team's cooked. These guys are terrible. Half of them.
They signed a bunch of players out of their primes, and it's going to be...
Yeah, I mean, Saturday night after the game, I probably won't be any sort of condition to do a podcast.
Why is Todd Bowles still their head coach?
I may or may not be staggering around the parking lot after the game because I feel like I
may not be there. We don't know yet.
Yeah, I don't know yet, but I feel like the preseason games you can always have a little bit more fun. Like I can get a little more drunk at the preseason games.
This is the fourth quarter. Nobody knows anybody's names,
right?
And you're just sitting there. The stadium's like 75% empty, and you're just like, all right, this is cool.
Most of the people in there are like walking around. The people from the nosebleeds come down and stand in the end zones, which is probably what I'm going to do. But it should be a good time. First Bucs game in a lot of months, literally since January. So if you're going, soak it in. It's the only home preseason game we got. It's always an interesting experience, but at the end of the day, it is Tampa Bay Buccaneers football, and it is back. Just about 24 hours from now, the Bucs will kick off against the Miami Dolphins in Raymond James Stadium for the first preseason game of the 2022 season. Thank you for checking out this week's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Check out the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show, and of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucks_daily, the #1 Buccaneers fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL, and check out his written work at BucksNation.com. Got anything cooking this week?
So for the preseason games, and probably for the regular season games, I'm going to be doing the standouts from each game. So I may be doing the players that struggled, but I know for sure I'm going to be doing the standouts. So stay tuned for that sometime on Sunday as well.
I'll be honest, we probably should have said this much earlier in the show, but I just now remembered, and I would be remiss if we didn't say anything at all. It has been pretty much exactly 1 year since we lost Mark Cook here in the Bucks beat, and
Oh wow. Yeah.
God, it sucks, dude. Like seriously thinking about it, he is incredibly missed. And one of my favorite things about Mark, I've said this plenty of times, he brought a lot of humanity to the Bucks beat, but he was just a fan. You know, he was informed as a reporter, and he did a great job as a journalist. I really enjoyed his content. But what took it to the next level was his connectivity, the way that he always made time for everybody, and just the guy that he was. Like when you watch episodes of What's Cooking now, you know what I mean? Like those players, they like
so
talking
funny.
to Mark. A lot of them don't like talking to media guys, and Mark was just different. He always made time for us. He always made time for the podcast, and he really is missed.
Yeah. It's just hard to believe it's already been a year. Yeah, you're really missed, Cookie, and yeah, it's hard to believe that you're gone. It's hard to believe that you're not geared up to start covering the team again for another season. But yeah, it's I don't really have much else to add. Just you covered it. He was one of a kind, and if you guys haven't yet, go and listen. Pewter Report did a tribute show to Mark Cook a few days ago. You can go on their YouTube channel and find it and listen to it, and they play a few sound bites and stuff, and it's so funny. He was really one of a kind. There hasn't been a guy, like, as far as like a media guy, like a journalist, that's been able to make, I think, people laugh more than Mark Cook has when it comes to sports and this team in general. So yeah, you're really missed, and we know that you're looking down on everybody, and we know that you're up there, smiling that the Bucks are gearing up for another, hopefully, championship run. So you're really missed.
Thank you, folks, once again for checking out this week's episode of the Cannon Fire podcast. I am your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish. We will talk to you Sunday after the game. Until then, and as always, go Bucks.